know you'll disagree on this one,
All right.
but I think it's actually important. Matthew
Yeah.
chapter 15, verse 11.
You want to
You
quote
want
it
me to
for the
read it?
audience? Yeah, you can read it.
Uh, so this is Matthew chapter 15, verse 11 in the New King James. Not what goes into the mouth defiles a man, but what comes out of the mouth, this defiles a man. Now, Christians, like when you understand the laws of Christ, Christians will point to this and say, oh, in the new covenant, we can eat unclean foods because nothing that goes into the mouth of a man defiles him. And of course, as a Hebrew, you'll point to the context and say, this is talking about Christ. He wasn't washing his hands and he was touching the bread. So, of course, a Hebraic perspective would reject, you know, the whole unclean interpretation. But if you take it at face value, literally, he is saying you could eat pork.
Okay, but hold on a second. Why would you take it at face value if it's not supposed to be taken at face value? Like, I'll give you an example. Like in John, the 6th chapter, Christ was upon the water and he was speaking to the multitudes. And he said that y'all have to eat my flesh and drink my blood. The people there thought that he was talking about cannibalism. But then we find out in the Last Supper, it actually was a metaphor, right? His flesh represented the bread and his blood represented the wine. So obviously, we're not supposed to take that upon face value just by reading it. In fact, even if you read the chapter, which I'd recommend pulling up in your free time, John, the 6th chapter, the people around Christ literally thought that he was talking about cannibalism. He said, well, what is this that he's saying that we got to eat him? Is this cannibalism here? What is he talking about? So the people thought that he was being literal, but obviously, upon reading the text, we see he was not being literal with what he's saying. So let's correlate that back with what you said here in Matthew 15, which, I've covered this many times before, so it doesn't hurt again. Matthew chapter 15, verse 11 says, not that which goes into the mouth defiles a man, but that which comes out of the mouth, this defiles the man. I have countless people over the years who run to that verse to try to show, well, look, I can eat shrimp, crab, and lobster because Christ said it's not that which goes in the mouth that defiles the man. But here's the problem. You need to read the Bible in context, not just read one verse. Like, look at this. If we jump up to the top of the chapter to read the context of this conversation, go to verse 1. It says, then came to Christ scribes and Pharisees, which were of Jerusalem, saying, why do thy scribes transgress the traditions of the elders? For they wash not their hands when they eat bread. So that was the whole start of this conversation. The Pharisees were criticizing Christ because his apostles, they did not wash their hands before they ate food, which was a tradition that the elders lived by. So that's what this whole conversation here is about. And to just further double prove my point here, I want to jump down to the end of this whole conversation before they move on to an entirely different subject. Let's go down to verse Let's go down to verse. I'll go to verse 17 and read on down. It says, "Do ye not ye understand that whatsoever entereth in at the mouth goes into the belly and is cast out to the drought? But these things which proceed out of the mouth come forth from the heart, and they defile the man. For out of the heart proceeds evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, and blasphemies. These are the things that defile a man. But to eat with unwashed hands defiles not a man." So he even reiterates in the final statement on the topic. I'll read verse 20 again. These are the things that defile a man, but to eat with unwashed hands does not defile a man. So that proves the entire response that Christ is giving is not about shrimp, crab, and lobsters, but it's actually about eating food without washing your hands, right? The bacteria and germs on your hands that get on the food you eat is not going to defile you because it will go through your body, your immune system will fight it off, and that's what it's talking about in clear context. So, what do you have to say after listening to the context both before and afterwards? Mike Shears.
I think, of course, what you're saying in context, because in the context, he's under the old covenant because he didn't die yet, right? And so, of course, in context, he's not telling people to eat pork, but of course, we know that um he really changed the law. That he added some new commandments, the law in Christ, and um let me actually get this real quick. This is this the same context, but instead of Matthew, it's Mark 7. Um, I don't know if you can see. Can I flip my camera somehow?
I
How
mean,
do
if
I
you
do
want
that?
to just say what it is, man, that's fine.
Okay, 1 second.
'Cause I have my Bible with me. I can just pull up if you ever need something.
Okay, 1 second. I got it. I got the verse up. I don't think y'all can see it though, but basically it says right here, if you can see it, in Mark chapter 7, verses 18 through 20. This is the Christian Standard Bible. It really depends on the Bible. Um, but it says in verse 18, he said to them, "Are you also as lacking in understanding? Don't you realize that nothing going into a person from the outside can defile him?" If you take that on face value, that would include pork. But let me continue. Verse 19, for it doesn't go into his heart, but into his stomach and is eliminated. Now you got these parentheses. Thus he declared all foods clean, right? Um, you could say that the translators added that parentheses, but that's clearly there though.
Okay, now that's just added on by the authors. Like say for instance, I don't know if you've ever read the book, they'll give like a reader's note on the side as to what they think such and such is talking about. So that's what that is right there. Right? They're saying, as in the people who are, you know, putting this text together for you to read, they're saying that that's what he's claiming. So that's not what Christ is saying himself, but that's what the people that are putting this together believe he's saying. So that's what that is. So that doesn't hold weight in this conversation because that's not Christ's word. That's the word of man being put onto that.
Nah, yeah, I use Christ's words as well as whatever manuscript added this, because some manuscripts have that parentheses missing, but that is in some manuscripts though.
Again, it doesn't matter if it's in the manuscript or not. That's not what Christ said. That's added on by people.
Yeah, Christ said nothing going into your mouth can defile you.
Yeah, and I just explained to
That
you
would
in the
include pork.
context what it means.
That would include pork, right?
No, sir, it would not, because the context is not about eating unclean versus clean meats. That's not the context. Yeah, like let me show you an
Uh,
example, right? Like let me show you an example. Let's go to Mark 7. Let's go to the top. It says, Then came together unto him the Pharisees and certain of the scribes which came from Jerusalem. And when they saw some of his disciples eat bread with defiled, that is to say, with unwashed hands, they found fault. For the Pharisees and all the Jews, except they wash their hands often, eat not, holding the tradition of the elders. And when they come from the market, except they wash, they eat not. And many other things there be, which they have received to hold, as the washing of cups and pots and brazen vessels and tables. And then, this verse 5, it says, Then the Pharisees asked him and said, Why walk not thy disciples after the tradition of the elders, but eat bread with unwashed hands? So I'm showing you one more time that even in Mark the 7th chapter, which people always like to run there or to Matthew 15, but I'm just showing that it's the exact same context. It's the same context that the whole discussion is about eating food with unclean hands. Not one verse. Now, I'm going to ask you this. Can you show me a verse in either Matthew 15 or Mark 7 where the term unclean meat or clean meat is mentioned? Is there a verse in there where it says that, sir?
well, I actually already showed you that, but you said that was in addition to the Bible.
Is it true or false? Is that not what Christ said?
What, with the washing of hands?
No, sir. You said you brought up the side note where it said, "Thus making all foods clean." Correct? That's what you said.
Oh yeah, I think that was added, but I'm saying it is there though.
Okay, so if I
Like,
open up,
like if I buy
so
the
if I
Bible,
open up, wait,
if
so
I
by your
buy
own
this
admission, you're
Bible,
saying that you acknowledge it was added in there by your own admission.
I would say that
But sir, I'm saying you
because
just said you
cause
agree that it was added in there, right?
I don't believe in the New Testament though. 'Cause this
Okay,
is my
just hear
perspective.
what I'm saying for a second. Hear what I'm saying. I know you don't believe in the New Testament, but you're trying to bring this up to prove what I'm saying wrong. So I'm responding and saying that what you're reading there is an added on like quote by the people putting this text together for you to read and translating it. I'm saying that's not what Christ is claiming. That's what the people are putting together, and they're saying that he's saying that, but Christ himself is not saying that. That was my response.
Yeah, I understand your perspective. Um, I'm saying, of course, uh, for example, you believe you disagree with the virgin birth, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there's different context to the virgin and all of that. So I'd say, yeah, I'm skeptical of that.
Right. So that's what I believe the New Testament is. I believe in context, if you take the Jewish perspective of a first century Jew, you will not get Christianity. But clearly, if you read it at face value, like with the virgin birth, the word virgin is there. Uh, well, not it technically. I don't have to get into it, but you get what I'm saying. And the English is there. Even in Mark 7, verse 20, you know, even if it's just the added parentheses, it still says, "Thus he declare all foods clean," and uh, nothing that goes into a man defiles him. So I mean,
Okay, but let me ask you this,
even
sir. Is
though
it true? Is it true or false in context? I've shown you where Christ even reiterates the statement again, and he says, "But to eat with unwashed hands doesn't defile the man." So would you agree that if you read in context, that's what he's talking about?
I would honestly disagree.
Honestly disagree. Well, give me a logical rundown though, because I think that reading, like say for instance, when we went to Matthew the 15th chapter, I read the top, gave the context, and then even under at the end of the discussion, he even reiterates himself again and says, "But to eat with unwashed hands doesn't defile the man." So I think that's obvious, clear in context, and that's what he's referring to. If you
I think you're
disagree,
assuming that.
what are you
You're
exactly pointing to?
So for one, we already substantiated that Christianity has clearly tampered with the New Testament. Um,
Well, let me just chime in on that. I don't think they tampered with the Bible. I think they're misrepresenting what the text says. Like, oh, let me give you an
it
example real
literally
quick.
says, "Thus he
This is
declare all foods clean." You can't get around that. It was
what
tampered.
translation? Excuse me, sir. What translation are you reading?
This the Christian Standard Bible, but it's in
Oh,
multiple
okay,
Bibles.
okay. So my statement stands clear. You said you're reading out of a Christian Standard Bible. Okay. Obviously, they changed certain words in there and add on like little pretext to the side in certain instances. I'm not arguing with that. In fact, I'd argue that proves my argument about what we're saying here. I'm telling you they added that on as to what they think it's talking about. So I'm agreeing with you that that part's add on, but that doesn't debunk the New Testament. That just shows that people are adding things on. And I even asked you what translation you said, some type of Christian translation. Said, okay, yeah, I'm not going to argue there's probably words that are changed around in there and quotes added here or there, or different words used in different texts. I'm not going to argue that, but I call that a false translation of the Bible. So I tell people to not read that at all. I tell people to avoid that because that's a corrupted version of the Bible, is what I would argue. But real quick, before I let you respond, I want to throw this verse out here because you keep talking about if reading on face value and all that. Well, the Bible wasn't meant for everybody to understand very simply, right? There's a lot of dark sayings in the Bible that are not meant for everybody. Look at this. This is Matthew chapter 13, verse 10. It says, "And the disciples came and asked him, Why do you speak unto them in parables? And he answered and said unto them, Because it is given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but unto the rest it was not given." So it wasn't given to everybody to understand what the Bible is talking about. So that's why reading things just on face value without context can lead people down the wrong direction in understanding, like yours.
Yeah, I understand you shouldn't read it at face value, but um, like what you said with the blood, the Lord Yahweh told us not to drink blood in Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 23.
Right.
That's another problem that you will not be able to get around other than by saying it's a metaphor.
Wait, hold on a second. You criticized me there saying, well, the only excuse you could use is say it's a metaphor. So let me understand. So are you saying it's not a metaphor? When Christ said to drink his blood and eat his flesh, you're saying that's not a metaphor?
I would say that's not a metaphor
What makes you say that?
because you have to drink his blood when you do the Eucharist.
And what is that blood? Is it wine?
Catholics believe, not you, but Catholics do believe that the wine does turn into Jesus Christ's real blood.
Okay, well, obviously that's not true. That doesn't obviously
The
turn
Catholics
into.
put together your New Testament.
Can you let me finish real quick, sir? I appreciate it. I'm not going to argue with you. Yeah, the Catholics are clearly wrong if they believe that it's literally turning into blood that they're drinking. But the fact is, the Bible is comparing the wine unto Christ's blood. It's not saying it literally is his blood. It's also not literally saying that we're eating his flesh by taking part in the communion with the bread, but it's just to represent, right, as a remembrance of him. But it's not supposed to be taken as literal, obviously.
So should I symbolically kill my little brother?
What do you mean by that?
I don't know. Let's say I just, for whatever reason, I just walk up to my little brother with a knife and just pretend like I'm about to stab him. I don't. Like, do you think the Lord would be okay with that? It's symbolic. You're not actually doing it.
Well, what would be symbolic about that? That would be like premeditated murder, right?
Well, not if you don't stab him now. You just like pull it out, or you just make a joke. Maybe not with a real knife. You know. Uh,
Yeah, I don't know the comparable you're making there, man.
okay, how about? I mean, it's kind of hard to make a direct analogy.
Let me
Um,
read this real quick. Let me read this for you. This is John chapter 6, verse 47 on down. It says, Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth on me has everlasting life. I am that bread of life. Your fathers did eat manna in the wilderness, and they are dead. This is the bread that comes down from heaven, that a man may eat thereof and not die. I am the living bread which come down from heaven. If any man eateth this bread, he shall live forever. And the bread that I will give is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world. The Jews therefore strove among themselves, saying, How can this man give us his flesh to eat? Then Christ said unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, except ye eat the flesh of the Son of Man, and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Whoso eateth my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will rise him up at the last day. For my flesh is meat indeed, and my blood is drink indeed. He that eats my flesh and drinks my blood dwells in me, and I in him. And another one, it says, As the living Father has sent me, and I by the Father, so he that eateth me, even he shall live by me. This is that bread which come down from heaven, not as your fathers did eat manna and are dead. He that eateth of this bread shall live forever. So that's one instance where Christ is comparing his body unto the bread and the wine, but it's not supposed to be taken as literal, is what my argument is.
So, okay, do you think that he would tell you to symbolically commit a sin?
No, he's not telling you to commit a sin there.
Because according to Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 23, the Lord tells us not to drink blood because blood has the life in it. That's directly opposite of what Jesus Christ is saying. He's saying, drink my blood because it has the life in it. So is God telling us to symbolically sin?
No, sir, he's not, because it's not supposed to be taken as literal. It's a metaphorical example. It's not literal.
Not according to the Catholics who put together your Bible, but if you want to say that, that's okay.
What do you? Let me ask you though. What do you mean by put together my Bible? Didn't they put yours together too, including the Old Testament that's in there?
No.
All right,
Isaiah wrote Isaiah.
let me show you something real quick, because you don't seem to be very knowledgeable on these topics, my friend. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I have a
What
lot of
about the
experience
Masoretic
with these
text? The
conversations.
Masoretic text has nothing to do with the Catholics.
I didn't ask you about that.
Yeah. If I read the Masoretic text right now, what does that have to do with the Catholics?
Well, first of all, I would argue that the New Testament was around before the founding of the Catholic Church. So your argument holds no water either way, my friend. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you if you're gonna sit there and say that about me, even if we look at the history, the New Testament itself was invented before the Catholic Church even existed, right? So you have no argument there. But I want to show you this. I'm going to give you another example where Christ talks about the flesh and the blood. This is Matthew chapter 26 and verse 26. It says, this is the Last Supper here before Christ is crucified. It says, and as they were eating, Christ took bread and blessed it and brake it and gave it to the disciples and said, take, eat, this is my body. And he took the cup and gave thanks and gave it to them, saying, drink ye all of it, for this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins. But I say unto you, I will not drink thenceforth of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. Well, that's a powerful verse right there. You know why? Because it proves that it's not literally his blood. It's actually wine. If you read the last verse I showed, verse 29, is telling him he's not going to drink this wine with them, right? This fruit of the vine, until he drinks it new with them in the Father's kingdom. But the point of the matter is that the wine is symbolically to represent Christ's blood that he shed for many upon the cross. I mean, it's just that simple, my friend. You know, I mean, you're welcome to disagree, but I mean, I think anybody that looks honestly into this will clearly see what Christ is talking about here. So that's another part where I'd say you're wrong on. Do you have like a third part you want to bring up about the New Testament before we move on to the hell topic?
I would say Jesus Christ was a Gnostic. He was not a Jew. I believe that the New Testament, is really, pulling from different traditions, of the Greeks and the Egyptians. Serapis Christus, you know of him, right? So, you already know about Serapis, so it's no point in even trying to, beat around the bush with it, Um, that's where I believe this New Testament is coming from. So, uh, I wouldn't. I wouldn't even take the New Testament, like, because when you actually read it, like some of it you could tell this Greek mythology mixed with some of the Hebraic tradition.
What would you
That's what
say
I
is
would say.
Greek mythology in there if you had to give one example?
We could literally just go into the actual manuscripts of the New Testament.